Hello, my name is Dr. Sandra Rios, and today I'm going to be talking about writing a proposal with a focus on writing measurable objectives and describing the method that the writer is going to use in order to achieve the measurable objectives. All proposals are persuasive documents. In other words, the writer's purpose is to persuade the reader to accept the proposed action and often to grant money that will fund the project. In a proposal, the writer needs to present to their reader a logical argument in the introduction or the project description. After the reader reads the project description, the writer then will proceed to explain to the reader what the measurable, quantifiable objectives of the project are. In other words, the writer will explain to the reader what outcomes the project is going to aim for, what objectives the writer and the proposal is trying to achieve. When we talk about objectives and subsequent methods for achieving the objectives, we often start by describing or stating general goals. General goals are broad, they can be very idealistic, and they are not necessarily measurable. In other words, you can have a goal such as reducing climate change or global warming. It's almost impossible to state a measurable objective for reducing global warming because it's such a worldwide phenomenon that you couldn't possibly control all the variables that cause climate change or global warming. But you can still have that as a goal. Specific objectives then are focused and quantifiable. So let's say that your general goal is trying to reduce global warming, and you present in your project description and in your introduction to your proposal the fact that CO2, the emissions of carbon dioxide, and methane have been linked with global warming. You might then, as one of your specific objectives, propose to reduce the production of CO2 and methane in power plants by 90%. Or you might propose, as one of your specific objectives, to reduce the production of methane by buses that burn diesel by 70%. The specific objectives allow you then to have a measure or a means in which to decide whether or not your proposed action has been successful or not. Many times, writers will write proposals that are aimed as a research proposal for a master's thesis or doctoral dissertation. Or sometimes the writer will write a proposal for a grant. And a grant in this case means a granting of some sort of funding or money to carry out the proposal. Regardless of whether the writer is a graduate student or a professional within an academic institution, the proposal must have measurable objectives or state concrete, observable, or measurable outcomes. Therefore, the critical question for you who are writing a proposal and who are trying to accomplish the assignment for this class that involves developing objectives and methods, the question then is, what do you want to achieve in your proposal? What measurable objectives do you want to achieve in your proposal? How can you measure them? For example, you know that I've been talking about chemtrails in our class. However, the problem is that I have no way of proposing a measurable objective for a proposal to stop or to eliminate chemtrails. Maybe if at all I could say, okay, I could maybe set up a project in which every day for 2 months, people in 5 different locations on the island of Puerto Rico at specific times will look up at the sky and observe the atmospheric conditions. If they observe chemtrails, then they will write them down. So maybe my measurable objectives would be an observational study in which we, at specific points of time, look at the sky, perform a specific action, and write down our objectives. That would be but that would not be a proposal that would affect chemtrails, stopping chemtrails. So, when you write proposals, you have to think to yourself, if I'm going to get money, if I'm going to get funding, how then can I prove to the people or the organization that's giving me the money or funding that I either achieved my goals and objectives, especially my measurable objectives, or that I've been a failure. You need to be able to put quantifiable, measurable objectives. So here are 2 examples. One is the example of a general goal. This would be to reduce air pollution in metropolitan San Juan. Now, air pollution is caused by a multiplicity of very complex factors. So to be able to reduce air pollution in metropolitan San Juan is going to be quite a challenge. However, I can narrow down that general goal by talking about, well, I'm going to substitute diesel, the use of diesel fuel, with the use of a cleaner, more sustainable, environmentally sustainable biodiesel. Okay, so these are general goals. There's no measurable objectives. However, if I want to get funding for my project, people are going to say, well, how do you know? How will you know if you are going to reduce air pollution in metropolitan San Juan? And I'd probably say, guess what? I can't guarantee that my project is going to reduce it, but I'm going to try to reduce at least a small portion of it, because logically speaking, if the buses of the Autoridad Metropolitana de Autobuses use use diesel fuel and substitute their use of diesel with biodiesel, which is a lot cleaner, it will then logically reduce the amount of air pollution in metropolitan San Juan. Okay, at least you could measure how much pollution the buses emit, or make the argument that if you reduce the emissions of diesel pollution by 60% in buses run by the Autoridad Metropolitana de Autobuses through the use of biodiesel, that you'll be able to make an impact on air pollution in the region. Therefore, another measurable objective would be to convert 75% of the buses run by the AMA to biodiesel. Obviously, if each bus has its emissions of diesel pollution reduced by 60%, and you only convert 1 or 2 buses to biodiesel, then the reduction of pollution is going to be negligible. However, if you can convert a significant amount of buses to biodiesel, then logically speaking, you might be able to at least measure how much pollution you have eliminated from the atmosphere. Whether or not that's enough to really reduce air pollution in metropolitan San Juan by a statistically significant amount is another question. But at least you know that your project will reduce, to some extent, the kinds of pollution, which are mainly particulate matter and methane, that are caused by the use of diesel, fossil fuel that is used to run the buses of the AMA. Here's another example of a general goal, and this is one that I've discussed in class, which is to transform the University of Puerto Rico Mayaguez into an environmentally responsible campus through a reduction in its dependency on fossil fuels. In other words, my general goal is to show that the University of Puerto Rico can be a responsible educational facility by reducing the amount of fossil fuels it uses. Now, how can I do that? Well, there are many different ways, obviously, to reduce energy consumption. However, my project is going to focus on the use or the consumption of electricity by cold drink vending machines or soda vending machines. And I have a measurable objective. I'm going to reduce the consumption of electricity by these cold drink vending machines by 35% through the use of specific types of soda vending machines or cold drink vending machines that are energy efficient. Now, I'm saying 35%. So I need to buy and install cold drink vending machines or convert the cold drink vending machines so that they reduce their consumption of electricity by 35%. Maybe one of these methods would be to install in 100% in every single cold drink vending machine in the colegio, in the room, programmable thermostats. Okay, so one of my measurable objectives then is to install all vending machine, sort of cold drink vending machines with programmable thermostats. There might be other measurable objectives. For example, I might want to, one of my measurable objectives would be to delamp all of the cold drink vending machines that have incandescent light bulbs behind the plastic front display of the machine. I mean, these illuminated fronts are totally cosmetic. They do nothing to keep soft drinks cold. All they do is make the machine more noticeable. But I don't really, if I want a cold Pepsi, I really don't care whether the illuminated front of the machine is on or off. I don't care. I just want a cold drink. I would care if I ordered or I put my money in and got a warm Pepsi. That would upset me because there's nothing worse than a warm Pepsi. But if I feel that by just putting programmable thermostats in the cold drink vending machines, it's not going to reach my measurable goal of 35%, then I would maybe have another objective, like I said, which would be to reduce, to eliminate the backlit displays and delamp all of the machines. So in order to decide which your objectives, and then we'll be talking about methods, you need to answer these questions. Obviously, the first one is, what are your general goals? What is it that you would like to accomplish? And then, what are your measurable, quantifiable objectives? And moving towards achieving your general goals, you need to be able to determine, you need to have numbers so that you can run statistical analysis most of the time. Now, like I said, in the situation, the example of the chemtrails, which I'm saying, okay, we're going to have maybe 50 people who 3 times a day for 2 months look at the sky and observe whether or not there's chemtrails in the sky. That's a measurable objective. In other words, I can measure, I can determine whether or not 50 people actually went outside 3 times a day for 60 days and looked up at the sky. They're going to be, in this case, you'd be conducting a form of primary research in which these people would be then writing down the results of their observations. And through the gathering of this data, you could then make claims about whether or not chemtrails have been affecting Puerto Rico or not, and whether their effect is positive, negative, or negligible. That is a question for further research. But yes, you would have some measurable, quantifiable objectives in the chemtrail proposal. All right, so what do you need to do? In order to describe your methods, you need to answer the following questions, because basically the method that you describe in your proposal is what you're going to do in order to achieve your objectives. So if in the proposal to eliminate pollution in San Juan, you have a measurable objective of reducing pollution from these buses by 75%, you would say then, one of my methods is to burn biodiesel instead of diesel. Okay, so the measurable objective is to reduce by 60% the pollution coming out of the AMA buses. Your method then is to use biodiesel. Another method would be to install electric motors. And I'm being funny here. Another method would be to have 1,000 hamsters on treadmills. Your methods are the way in which you're going to reduce the pollution. Some of your methods might be more feasible than others. For example, it could be very feasible to burn biodiesel if you can have a source of biodiesel available to use in substitution for diesel. Or maybe your proposal will provide you with enough money to convert the diesel engines to electric engines. I don't think that having 1,000 hamsters on treadmills is going to be a very feasible way of making these buses run without a motor that burns either diesel, biodiesel, or electric. So the hamster example is very, I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's in scientific terms not feasible. Okay, so in the AMA project, your method for achieving your goals of reducing air pollution, of reducing by 60% the amount of methane, maybe, of air pollution, methane, and particulate matter, would be to use biodiesel. And you could also say that you're going, the form in which you're going to produce the biodiesel is to set up a factory. Also, that might be part of your method. Is biodiesel is not commonly available, it's not easily available. Therefore, one of the methods for producing the biodiesel that's going to then substitute diesel would be to set up a factory that distills 1,000 gallons of biodiesel a day. So you would have the method biodiesel, then you would also have objectives that relate to how much biodiesel that you're going to manufacture so that you can then achieve your measurable objectives of substituting diesel for biodiesel. In the cold drink vending machine project, your methods would be to install maybe Acme programmable thermostats on all of the Royal vendor cold drink vending machines that are in all the buildings in the colegio. In other words, one method would be to install programmable thermostats. And then remember I talked about delamping or eliminating all the incandescent light bulbs in the back of the display case on the machines. This would be another method of reducing energy consumption. So two methods that you would use would be to use programmable thermostats and to delamp the cold drink vending machines. So these would be the methods. You would then, in order to achieve or to determine whether you've achieved your objectives, measure the amount of electricity that these machines consume before you apply your method of programmable thermostats and delamping. You'd measure before, and then after you would also measure. So you might install the programmable thermostats, unplug or unscrew all the light bulbs, measure electric consumption for 3 or 4 months, and then check to see if you have a reduction in the amount of electricity they consume after you applied your method for reducing electrical consumption. In conclusion, I hope that this helps you to understand objectives and methods, but in conclusion, goals are general and objectives must lend themselves to measurement in some form. It can be through observation, it could be through electrical devices, it could be through cinta métrica or measuring tape, it could be through some sophisticated laboratory equipment. Whatever method whatever your objectives are, you need to be able to measure to see whether you've achieved those objectives before and after, or during, as a result of your, the setup of your project. So in order to write a proposal, you must develop objectives that are quantifiable and possibly amenable to statistic analysis. And I should have put the last point here, the method. Method refers to what you do to achieve your objectives.